everybody, my name is Kelly. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't do videos ever, so just bear with me. October is actually Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and so I guess in honor of that huge thing, I would do a video of my experience with the topic. So my story is really long, just hope you can make it through, but I just feel like there's so many people out there struggling that feel so lonely. They don't feel like they can share what they're going through because sometimes, you know, people feel like they're the only ones going through something and that no one can relate to it. So I just wanted to make a video over my experience and my story, and I just hope it helps somebody. So let's just get right into it. So I guess you could say I am transitioning out of the newlywed phase. My husband Jeff and I got married in October of 2018, and we just celebrated a year of marriage, so that was really cool. But we have had struggles with having a successful pregnancy. My whole life, all I have wanted was a family. If you would have asked me at any point in time what my biggest goal in life is, it would be to have my own family. I've just always wanted it. I've always been really passionate about having that for myself. It's never been success or money or fame. I've always just wanted a family. So it was no surprise that when I got married, I asked my husband all the time, okay, when are we having kids? It's time for kids. Let's have kids. Yay, kids. And he was just kind of like, girl, slow down. We just got married. So finally, after a couple weeks, I convinced him. He told me that we could start trying during the holidays, which is kind of a broad time frame because Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, I don't know what you mean. So I asked him, he said, well, November, right? You know, the holidays. And I was like, okay, let's go. So around the 1st of November, I finished the end of my birth control that I was on. I'd been on it for a couple years. I stopped that and I was really frustrated. It took about a month for my body to get back into the swing of things, which is not abnormal. So I don't know why I was frustrated. But we started trying in December, and it happened right away, which I know is sometimes not what you think is gonna happen. You just hear so often how it takes people a long time to get pregnant, and that's definitely what I expected for myself for whatever reason. So I didn't, take a test because I felt like I was pregnant, or I didn't feel like this is it, I'm gonna be pregnant. I wasn't late, I wasn't anything. I remember being at work, it was on New Year's Eve. I just remember feeling my back hurt really bad, and my low back. And I just remember thinking, ugh, something's wrong with my kidneys. I don't know. Never had a kidney infection before, but for some reason I was like, I have a kidney infection. So I went home and I was gonna take a pregnancy test because I felt like, oh, if I need to go to the doctor, need to be put on antibiotics, they're probably gonna ask me if I'm pregnant, and let's just get that out of the way, rule that out so that it's one less step we have to take at the doctor's office and I can just get to feeling better and they can give me what they need to give me. So I took a test, and I remember just waiting and waiting and waiting for the test to show up negative because I was just like, okay, let's go, let's be negative so that I can get antibiotics and just get to feeling better. And So I remember picking it up and thinking, this is wrong, because the test said pregnant. And I just remember thinking, no, because we only tried one time. We've just tried the 1 month. And so I was thinking, this doesn't happen. So I called up my friend and I was like, I just took a test and it says I'm pregnant. And she said, calm down. Maybe it's false, but it's very rare that it's false. So go take another test. So I went to go take another test, and immediately the line shows up, and it's the positive line with, you know what I'm talking about. And immediately that line shows up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. And I was just thinking, I have to tell Jeff. What is he gonna think? He's gonna be so excited. How am I gonna do it? I'm gonna film it. And I did, I filmed it, but it was terrible, y'all. I remember I had a blanket and everything set up because I went on New Year's Day and got some good deals on some shopping, and got a blanket that said hello, and I got a pair of mugs that said Mama Bear and Papa Bear, and I put it, on the blanket, and it was all laid out and really cute, and I had all my 6 pregnancy tests, because 2 is too, that's not enough. You don't really know unless you take 6, of course. So I had everything laid out. I waited for Jeff to come home from work that day, and he walked in and saw it, but I was standing in the doorway, so he walked from the bed to the doorway. Well, then the camera didn't get any of that, so it's terrible. So just forget that video. So I shared the news with him, and it was awesome, you guys. He was so excited. So of course we are overjoyed at the fact that we're pregnant, and we're gonna have an almost fall baby, and it's just gonna be so great, and we're gonna be parents. And that's what you think, you get pregnant and you're like, okay, now we have a baby. And I remember some of my symptoms being, I was so tired. I could sleep all night long. I would get home from work and I would crash, and I would just pass out at 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I would sleep until my alarm went off the next morning. And I would wake up and I would feel like I didn't sleep at all. It was terrible. And I was super nauseous, and it's not like anything specific made me sick or feel sick. I was just, as a human being, so sick. It just felt so sick. And my face was really broken out, and my cravings, I had intense cravings, which I thought was weird, because I had read that you don't really get, cravings until a little bit later on into pregnancy, and I was super early at this point, and I just had such intense cravings. So I had called up my doctor, and she said, okay, well, we're gonna get you in for an ultrasound, but we won't get you until you're 10 to 12 weeks, because that's just how we do it. So I was like, okay. And so I was about 4.5 weeks when I called her, and I was like, man, that's 6 weeks. That's a long time to wait. So started the waiting process, and yeah. But I do remember at 6 weeks, I had a very defined bump, which was kind of strange, because when you're newly pregnant, you have a lot of hormones surging through your body, the HCG and the progesterone, and it can make you really bloated, and it makes you look further along than you are. But I remember, I had a very, very defined bump. It was there. And I remember thinking, it's kind of weird. I have a bump at 6 weeks, but I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna be one of those big, pregnant ladies. And honestly, I didn't care. I was like, give me all the weight, let's do it. I'm making a baby, y'all. And So that was kind of strange. So we go the 6-week waiting, and as the time went on, I just remember thinking, well, I had such a defined bump at 6 weeks, but from that 6 weeks until the 10.5-week mark, I didn't grow at all, which I thought, okay, that's fine. Maybe I'm just not, maybe I'm just not going to be as big as I thought, or maybe, everyone's different. Everyone shows at different times. Everyone grows at different times. Every pregnancy is so different. So I was just like, maybe I looked like I was going to be really big, but maybe I'm going to be a lot smaller than I thought. I don't know. But, kind of in the back of my mind, I was just like, what if something's wrong? And, I'm kind of a nervous Nelly, which is who I am. And I don't know, I just kind of figured something maybe could be wrong, but of course you don't want to think that. So we get to our doctor's appointment, and we're excited, of course, and I have my husband with me, and I tell him, I want you to film this, and it's gonna be great, and we're gonna see our baby, whatever. And so the sonographer is super sweet. She gets the little wand and does it over my stomach, and she can't really find anything, and she was like, oh, you must have a tilted uterus. And I was like, I don't know, I've never done this before, just see what you need to see, show me my baby. And so she had to do it, the other way. And so, she's looking around, and as soon as I see it on the screen, I just look at Jeff, and I just shake my head, and I tell him to, put the camera down, because I knew already that it was not good. I had done my homework, done my research, because y'all, I am crazy when it comes to planning, and I want to be in the know. And when I go to a doctor's appointment, I don't want to be left in the dark, because you could tell, she's not really supposed to say anything to me, because you're supposed to wait for the doctor to get the actual results. But, I can tell that she can tell that something's not right. Throughout the scan, she just kind of asked me some questions, and she's just saying, are you sure you have your dates right? Basically just making me know even more in my heart, it's not good. But she's still kind of looking around, and she's looking, and she just asks, do you have a history of twins in your family? And we say, no, and we just kind of look at each other, and she says, well, it looks like you were having twins. She's kind of pointed out, here's one baby over here, and here's the other baby over here. But one was significantly bigger than the other, and she says, well, it looks like this one didn't make it. And selfishly, I just kind of think, oh, well, there's another one in there, so let's look at that one, how's that one doing? But I knew. But weirdly enough, that we were having twins, my sister one time had a dream that I was gonna have twins. And she said, Kelly, you're gonna have twins. And I was like, whoa, sister friend, no way. Not me, no way, Jose, it's not in our family. I don't know why you think I'm gonna have twins. And she said, well, Kelly, it has to start somewhere. And she was right, because here I am, had, a pregnancy of twins. And so I just thought that was so, funny, because throughout the time before we had our sonogram, Jeff and I would just kind of amp each other up over the thought of having twins. And we just kind of knew in the back of our heads that it wasn't gonna happen, but there we were, pregnant with twins. But she just kind of turned off the machine. She took a couple pictures, and we got a picture of one of them, and you can see the body and the little yolk sac, the little round yolk sac. And she only gave us a picture of one of the sacs and one of the babies, but the other one you can really see, so I guess it was, you know, didn't really make sense to have that picture. But she just kind of kept telling us she's really sorry and just to take our time, but that she was gonna set us up a room so I could talk to my doctor. And, you know, I was talking to her about what was going on, and she said, well, you know, it's not really uncommon for a first pregnancy to miscarry because your body doesn't really know what's happening and tries to fight off, you know, the foreign object in your body. And so it's super common. It's like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 is a miscarriage, and so it's super common. So she said, well, I mean, we're not gonna look into it. It maybe just was genetically abnormal, and so it just kind of didn't work out, and that's okay. There's no reason why your next pregnancy shouldn't be a healthy pregnancy. So, you know, we'll do a D&C. She let me choose, I chose a D&C, and she said, well, we're gonna do a D&C, and there's no reason why you can't start trying again as soon as your first period. And she says, well, you know, some doctors prefer you to wait about 3 cycles, but there's no scientific fact saying that you'll have, you know, less of a healthy pregnancy 1 month after versus 3 months after. So you're clear to try as soon as, you know, your first period. So Jeff and I were very public with our first miscarriage. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I just felt like it was really important to share what I was going through, because I had heard a few people saying how they had been through it and they didn't know it was so common, and they, you know, they didn't really feel like they had anyone they could talk to about it. And I didn't want anyone to feel like they couldn't talk to me about this, because it's part of my story. It's something that I went through. But following that, you know, like I said, we were very public with that. And a lot of our friends and even some of our family don't know that following that miscarriage, we miscarried a second set of twins. So that was really hard for us. So it took about a month for my body to re-regulate after my D&C with the first set of twins, and we started trying right away. So it was around the beginning of April we tried again, and towards the end of April, right, you know, before, you know, a few days I was due to have my period, I took a pregnancy test, because with my first one I was maybe 4 days early. So, you know, I tested because I thought maybe I had a kidney infection. It's not because I was late or anything. So I was actually early testing, and it came up positive. Well, about the same time before my missed period, at the end of April, I had the same thing. My back was hurting so bad in my kidney area, and I was like, surely I'm pregnant, because I've only had this happen one time. I started getting really nauseous, and I was like, we did it again, we're pregnant. And I took a pregnancy test, and it was one of those like first response with like the 2 little lines. And I took it, and sure enough, there are 2 lines. Well, like the first line is super faint, and so I took another test and it said negative. And I was like, did I freaking just get a false positive? That is so rare. And I took maybe 2 or 3 more tests over the course of a few days, and all negative. And then I got my period. So that didn't work out. And so we tried again starting the beginning of May. And I was frustrated. I mean, I'm such a planner. You know, I've already talked about how I'm such a planner. With the 2 times before that we had tried, I took ovulation tests all the time. I wanted to take as many pregnancy tests as possible. Well, this time I was like, forget it. I didn't get pregnant the first time, you know, back, and everyone says you're supposed to get pregnant. You're supposed to be fertile, like super fertile after you have a miscarriage. You're supposed to be super fertile after you have a DNC. I didn't get pregnant, and so I'm not even gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna take ovulation tests. I'm not gonna take pregnancy tests until I miss my period. I was going crazy, you guys. And so, I was going on a trip for Memorial Day weekend with a few of my friends. And we were gonna go float the river down in South Texas, and I took a pregnancy test because I was like, well, I'm due to start when we're floating the river, so I have to be prepared and bring all the necessities. And so I thought, okay, well, it's about that time. I wasn't gonna take a pregnancy test, but I'm going to take one because I need to know if I'm gonna start when I'm floating the river. How fun. Was really looking forward to that. So I took a pregnancy test, and it was a Friday, and I was supposed to start on Monday. And so I wasn't late, and so I took a test, and it was negative. And I went to my friend's house because I go and I see her every Friday with her little baby, and I cried, ugly cried to her, and she was like, what is wrong with you? And I just said, I'm so frustrated. I got pregnant the very first time, and here I am like 2 months of trying afterwards when you're supposed to be super fertile, and I'm not getting pregnant. And she just said, stop stressing about it. It's not gonna help you, and so what? Like, you're gonna get pregnant when you're supposed to get pregnant. And she's right. It's just not what you want to hear, but she's absolutely right. And for some reason, the next day on Saturday morning, I took another pregnancy test because I just wanted to be double sure, because I'm going on this trip and I'm gonna be prepared no matter what. So I took another test, and it was positive. And I was shocked. I mean, of course not because I didn't want to be pregnant, but I had just less than 24 hours before taking a pregnancy test, and it was super negative, like in bold letters, not pregnant. And here I was with a positive pregnancy test, and I was a little nervous, I gotta admit, because the history of what happened the first time obviously is flowing through my mind, and that is just, you know, all I can think about. Of course I want to be excited. I prayed and I prayed for this to work out, and yeah, I waited for Jeff to come home that night. He was out of town, so I just laid the test on the bathroom counter because I knew he was gonna go probably take a shower as soon as he got home, and I was like, well, he'll just see him and, you know, whatever. And he comes into the room that night after he gets home, and he just looks at me and he says, really? And I was like, yep, I'm pregnant. And he just said, what do you think about that? Like, because obviously we're just everywhere and nowhere at once. We just don't even know how to feel, because of course we want to be so excited, and we were, but you can't help but think about what happened and just not, you know, be a little bit nervous, of course. So we just rolled with it. There we were, pregnant again. And I called my doctor's office as soon as I got back from my trip. So I went on my trip, and none of my friends knew, and I just kind of played it off. I think they knew, but I just kind of played it off. And we got back from the trip, and I called my doctor, and they said, well, you can go ahead and come in for blood work, and we'll check your HCG levels, and we'll check your progesterone, and we'll set you up for your sonogram, but it's not going to be until you're about 8 weeks. And they do that just because a lot of the time you can't see a whole lot beforehand, and they don't want to freak you out by like going and you don't see what you're supposed to see or like what you want to see, and it's just like a whole thing. So I was like, okay. So I go in, you know, the day after Memorial Day and have my blood work done, and they said, okay, you're gonna come back in 48 hours, try and get it as close to the time frame as you can, and we'll recheck you, and your HCG should double. And I was like, okay. So I go in on a Thursday for my second set of labs, and I'm just a mess that whole day, just waiting for those results to come in, and I didn't get them till the next day on Friday. And they called me and they said, your HCG more than doubled, which is awesome. And I think it went from like, I don't know, like a 280 something to like 5 something. So it wasn't like a dramatic difference in hormone levels. So they said your HCG more than doubled and your progesterone looks good. It's, you know, right where it needs to be. So a huge weight was just lifted off my shoulders. But of course I don't know what to expect, because I can't compare that to anything, because my first one, I didn't have any blood work done. So I don't really have anything to compare those numbers to. So, you know, weight was lifted off my shoulders, but I was still a little cautious. And I just knew in my heart of hearts, I could not wait until I was 8 weeks to find out if everything was actually okay. So I have a friend who is an OB, and I said, I need your help. I can't wait. I'm gonna be a nervous wreck for, you know, 4 more weeks. I can't do that. And she said, okay, well, we can do a couple of scans, and you know, that way you just have peace of mind and you know what's going on. I said, okay. So she did a scan on me when I was 6 weeks. You know, I think I was just maybe barely 6 weeks. And we go in and we see 2 sacs. 2, but no babies. So we have 2, you know, fertilized sacs, but there's nothing in it, and I just freaked out. I just was frustrated and thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why can't my body do this? Why don't I have any babies in those sacs? And she was like, well, don't stress about it, because, you know, you're still really early. Twins don't always follow the rules. Like, if you do have 2 sacs and they truly do have babies in them, they don't really follow the rules. Sometimes they're a little bit smaller and they take a little bit more time to show up. So she said, we'll do it again next week when you're about 7 weeks. And if you don't see anything then we know. And you call your doctor and y'all will figure out a plan. And I said, okay. So we went back the next week, exactly a week after. And she pulls up the screen, and she's not really getting the angle that she wants to get, so she's, you know, kind of turning the screen, but she's having me lay back, and I'm laid back so far that I can't really see the screen. And so we're just sitting there having a conversation, and she's looking, and I kind of scan over, and then I like look and I sit up really abruptly, and I know she's like, don't move, but I sat up because I saw something that I'd never seen before. And she confirmed it. She said, well, I see more than I saw last week. She said, there's a baby in that sac, and it has a heartbeat. And it was the coolest thing to see, y'all. Like, we didn't get to experience that on the first ultrasound, and so that was crazy. And we left, and we were so excited. And my husband was a little bit sad. He was, saying, well, I was kind of hoping the other baby would be there too, and I was hoping we would have our twins, and and I was like, whatever, dude, I'm pumped. We have one baby. We have one healthy baby. That's all you need. You just need one. And we were just so happy. And this pregnancy was so different. I had no symptoms. I wasn't sick. I wasn't tired. I wasn't anything. I didn't have cravings. My skin was clear. I didn't have anything that I had last time. I was pregnant. My back wasn't hurting, nothing. And so we go around for the 8-week scan, and I'm thinking I should be feeling worse than I feel, because I feel like I should be progressed far enough by that 8-week mark that I should be feeling something. So when I go in, we have the same sonographer that we had with the first ones. And she was like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I feel great. I was like, something's wrong. I feel great. I'm not sick. I'm not tired. I don't have any pregnancy symptoms, and something's wrong. And she was like, okay, well, like, let's take a look. And so I lay back, and it's got the screen right in front of me. She has her own little screen, and we have our screen, right in front. And as soon as it pops up on the screen, my mouth instantly and I look at Jeff, and he's like kind of looking at it like, is it supposed to look like that? Because he's thinking something's not right. I'm not good. And this is what we see. It looks a little strange, but 2 babies. And we are floored. We are just in disbelief on what is going on. And she said, are you sure? Are you sure you don't have any twins in your family? Like, didn't you have twins last time? And we were like, yeah, we did. And these ones were identical. So another baby didn't grow in that sac. That other sac was still empty. And then we had 2 perfectly healthy babies. We had one that was heart rates around the 160s, and then we had one that heart rate was around the 180s. And it was insane, and we were so beyond happy. I mean, we got our twins, and what more could you ask for? Time goes on. I again notice I'm not really growing, and I start to get a little panicked. And that ultrasound that I had, that when we found out, they were twins, was about 8 weeks, 3 days, so close to, about 8.5 weeks. And my next appointment was going to be around the 13-week mark for a fetal heart tone appointment. And instead of doing a Doppler, since it was twins, they were just going to do another ultrasound. And so I had, a few weeks to go. And we were gearing up for this trip with my family. And, I was going to tell my siblings on that trip. Our parents knew. My siblings didn't know. And I was going to surprise them on that trip, since I was going to be, almost 12 weeks at that point on the trip. And I was like, well, I'm far enough along that they would know. Well, I'm still getting kind of worried, and in my mama heart, I just felt like this isn't right. This isn't, how it's supposed to go. And I was watching a YouTuber, and she had twins, and I, kind of watched her weekly updates, and around 11 weeks, she looked about the same as I did. And she kind of had expanded out this way, but not this way. And I felt like that's where I was. And so it kind of eased my mind a little bit, and I just still kind of knew. So I talked to my friend again, and she said, well, if you're having doubts, let's just take another look. I said, okay. So we go in, and she does the wand, because I'm, far enough along that it should be maybe visible with the pelvic ultrasound, and she can't see anything. And she said, well, we're just gonna have to do it the other way. And I kind of freaked out, and I was like, well, is it bad? Is it bad that you can't see anything at this point with the pelvic ultrasound? And she was like, well, I mean, it's kind of hit or miss at this point. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's just, everyone's different. So I'm just kind of like, okay. So we had to go to a different machine. The other one wasn't working the way it needed to for the other image that we needed. And so we go to this other machine, and the screen doesn't really turn. And so, they can see the screen. My husband was there, and then, the OB, and she said, she was kind of making conversation with me, of course, and I just flat out asked her, do you see heartbeats? And she just said, I'm sorry, no, I'm not seeing any heartbeats. And I just laid down, and I just looked at the ceiling, and I just was in shock, because everybody says once you see heartbeats past 8 weeks, you're good. You're in the clear. Your miscarriage chance goes to very minute chances, so small. And so we never really had a reason to believe we didn't have 2 healthy babies. So I was just kind of in disbelief. So she said, well, go talk to your doctor. She'll know what you need to do. So we go in the next morning, same ultrasound tech, and she confirms it. She said the cyst that is in your ovaries that you get pregnant off of, like the side that you get pregnant off of, that cyst is vital, because it produces the necessary hormones that your babies need until the placenta takes over around 10 to 12 weeks. And she said that cyst had ruptured, that it wasn't there anymore. The yolk sacs had collapsed, and it just looked different. So you can kind of see the difference from that first ultrasound to the second, how they're no longer next to each other, and they're actually like in their own little, almost quadrants of the sacs. So yeah, we went in to another room, and we talked to the doctor. She said, okay, we're gonna do some tests, because now that you've miscarried twice, we need to figure out what's going on. So she does a blood panel, probably took 7, 8, 9 tubes of blood, and she said that she was gonna check everything. She was gonna check, my iron levels, thyroid levels, clotting mechanisms, everything, just anything she can think of. And she said I'd be on progesterone for the remainder of my pregnancies. Any other pregnancy I have, I would have to be on progesterone. And yeah, I was just, of course, just do what you need to do. Help me find out why I can't do this. And she said, well, I just want you to be prepared, because about 99% of the time these lab tests come back completely normal, and we will have no reason, no explanation as to why this keeps happening. I got another D&C. I just couldn't wait. I mean, I had, this was my second what they call missed miscarriage, where you miscarry, but your body tries to continue with the pregnancy. So instead of passing everything on your own, it kind of holds everything into your body. And so it doesn't go anywhere. And so I didn't want to sit there and wait to see if it was going to happen on its own. So I just, had another procedure. And about a week and a half after that procedure, I get a call from the doctor's office, and she said, well, your biopsies came back normal, and your blood work came back, and your protein S is a little bit low, which is no big deal. We'll probably just have you on blood thinners for your next pregnancy. And I was like, okay. She said, well, we're gonna send you to a hematologist. Well, I work at a doctor's office, and I've been to school for medical, stuff, and I know enough to know that I wouldn't be being sent to a hematologist if it was just a little bit, a little bit abnormal. So I was like, well, these have to be pretty bad. So I requested my labs, and y'all, they were so low that one of my values didn't even have a true value. It just said less than 25%. Awesome. Like, that's not awesome. And so we go to the hematologist, and they say, well, it's low, but we'll just repeat it, and your next appointment in about 3 weeks, we'll see you back, and we'll come up with a plan, and we will get you situated and figure out what's going on. Well, I had also tested myself for a genetic mutation that one of my friends had that recommended that I get tested for it, and it's called the MTHFR gene mutation, and there's 2 mutations involved with that specific, gene. And I have the mutation for blood clotting, abnormal blood clotting, and basically just means I could have an increased risk of a DVT, which is, a very severe blood clot at any point in my life. It can just randomly happen. And so the only time they say that it's actually harmful or risky really to have this gene is in pregnancy, because it can lead to pregnancy complications and pregnancy loss. And so, of course, that's a red flag in my mind. I did so much research on it, and everything that I found said that it's really comes into play when you're pregnant. So of course we talked about that, and at my next appointment he comes in and he says, well, your protein S was fine, your levels looked normal, so it was probably just a mistake that it was low. Like, the machine that they tested it on, the assay must have been off, the QC was wrong, it made your labs abnormal, but your labs aren't abnormal, so you're fine. And he said, but just to be sure, we'll retest it on, the same lab that you had it done at previously, because when I had it repeated, it was at a different lab. He said, so go back to that lab where it was abnormal, and if it comes back abnormal, we'll know you have a true abnormality, and if it comes back fine, then you're fine. And that was my whole appointment. It took about 5 minutes. And I cried. I was so mad. And I was just like, this was the appointment. We were supposed to have a plan. We were supposed to figure out what's going on. And we were supposed to get a plan, get me pregnant, have a baby. And that's not what happened. So of course I go and get my blood work, redone. And I'm mad because I'm paying money to get this redone, and I know it's gonna come back normal because HCG levels in pregnancy can throw off your labs to where, it's one way during pregnancy and a different way outside of that. So of course I'm frustrated because at this point I'm not pregnant anymore. Whereas when I first had it done, I was 8 weeks equivalent pregnant, and my HCG was like hundreds of thousands of units of HCG. And so, I was so mad. And so I go and have the stupid lab done again. I know it's gonna come back normal. So about 2 weeks later, I have another appointment with him, and he said, well, your labs came back normal, so it's probably just a mistake that it was low. Deja vu. And I was like, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was because I was pregnant. And he was like, oh, you were pregnant when you had those done the first time? Like, did we not have an appointment before this to talk about my history? Whatever. So he's like, well, because you've had 2 losses, we're just gonna give you the anticoagulants anyway. And so I was just like, okay, that's all I needed to hear. And so next time I'm pregnant, I will have to do progesterone. I will have to do a baby aspirin due to the clotting mutation. And then I'll have to inject myself with shots every day, which is not a big deal. If I have to give myself shots to have a healthy pregnancy, I mean, who wouldn't do that? I'll do it. And so, yeah, I mean, I know that was kind of long and drawn out, and some of it was kind of all over the place, but that's my story. And, you know, we're still praying to have a healthy pregnancy, and I mean, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, I know. But the reason I felt so compelled to share my story, you know, I don't want any girl out there who's going through this to think that something is wrong with them and that they're not, you know, that is it. It's not normal. And it is. I mean, it's very, you know, it's not normal to be having all these issues, but I mean, you're not alone in what's going on. There are people out there who are struggling. I'm so very fortunate. We're very fortunate to know that we can get pregnant. You know, there's a lot of people out there who struggle and struggle and struggle to get pregnant, and we're very fortunate that we were able to get pregnant both times so quickly. But you know, it doesn't make it any less hard, and it's hard to see, you know, my friends walking around who are pregnant and seeing all the pregnancy announcements when you were gonna announce yours the same time, and it's hard, and it doesn't make me any less happy for my friends and, you know, everyone who is pregnant and living their own story. I mean, that is so great for them, but it doesn't make it any less hard that they get to experience the thing that I almost got to experience twice. And, you know, I do worship at my church, and before every service, I pray that if one person, just one person, gets changed from the worship or from the message, you know, from that night's or that morning's service, then it will be a success. Because all it takes is one person to be changed, and that is all you need. So if there's one person that is changed from just me sharing what I've been through, I mean, I will count this as a success, just getting the opportunity to share my story. If one person is changed, I will, you know, I'll be so happy with that. If one person feels like I'm not alone and I can do this, and there are other people like me. I mean, feel free to come to me and talk to me. I would be glad to talk to you and share stories. And I've met, you know, people through the heartbreak that I've gone through. It's brought me to different people that I never would have talked to before. And so that's been great to just have that community, and it has helped me so much. So if I can be a support for anyone, I would love that. So I'm sorry that was so drawn out. I'm sorry that was so long, but I just felt like it was time to share the full story. So there you go. Thank y'all for sticking around.